Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Oner podcast, the podcast where we break down and review films all in one big, long, unbroken take. I'm Austin Archer, and with me, as always, is my childhood next-door neighbor and lifelong best friend,
Kramer England.
And today we are talking about He-Man and the Masters of the
Universe. However that song goes.
I don't know how that song goes. I was sort of making up a melody there.
Yeah,
but,
it sounded right. Sounded right.
Masters of the Universe. I got a cowboy shirt on. I don't know why. I was like, there's like a cowboy riding a horse. He rides.
Yeah, he rides the tiger.
He rides a tiger, and he's sort of like a space cowboy, I guess. He's a little bit of I don't know. I do think that there's something about the origin of this story as like Mattel was just like, we need something for boys. And that sort of association between cowboys and just the kind of ultra masculinity, the almost like comedic ultra masculinity of He-Man as a property. It was like, Mattel lost the toy rights to Kenner for Star Wars and G.I. Joe, and then they just were like, okay, well, we need something that's our anti-Barbie, and it was like He-Man.
That story. Which, have you seen The Toys That Made Us? Is that?
I haven't watched that.
Okay.
But the story of how this came to be is really interesting.
I would highly recommend watching The Toys That Made Us. Just the whole series. The guy who does those documentaries is awesome. His documentaries are so engaging and they're so fun. But that one specifically about He-Man is really interesting because they go through that story and then just like it was doing so well, and like who created it was like a thing between a few people, and like, but then like after a while they're just like, oh yeah, like they knew it was ridiculous and they just kept being ridiculous about it. So anyway, but it all worked out. They made a ton of money. Not this movie though.
Yeah, is it not doing very well?
Not doing too great. No.
What were your general feelings about? We haven't talked about this at all.
We haven't.
We just jumped on because we were busy watching the NBA Finals.
Which was a crazy game.
It's awesome.
Great game.
If you guys saw Game 4 in Madison Square Garden, that was a game.
What an ending. What an ending. Okay, my general thoughts on this. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And that was what I wanted. I wanted a lot of fun. There's definitely some things that I would change. Or I was expecting something a little different. I was hoping that they were going to lean into the cheesy campiness of it, but it's almost like they were kind of like poking fun at it and making fun of it to kind of almost justify it. And I didn't think that was the right move. So it felt too silly at times, especially in the times when like there was some heart in there, because there's a decent story in there.
Yeah,
a decent story. It's, even though it's we've seen it all before, but like there was something there, but then they'd have a moment and then they'd undercut it. So that was, and it was too long and the pacing was kind of weird.
Yeah.
So and the comedy is kind of what seemed to slow everything down. So, but again, like the action scenes were awesome. I thought the visual effects for the most part, when they needed to count, I thought
what? Yeah, that was one thing that really worked for me. I thought I was gonna have a harder time with sort of the animation of Skeletor and some of these
me too.
And I really didn't. In fact, I found myself like multiple times being like, it looks pretty good.
I thought it looked great.
And I felt like there were more practical effects than I expected.
Yes.
There was more stuff in camera with like practical sets where I was like, I think I was kind of expecting this all to be sort of Attack of the Clones, green screen, everything's fake, cartoon world. And I was surprised by the amount of action sequences that seemed to be shot on practical sets and had a lot of practical stunt work. And I liked how many of the characters' designs were made mostly practically. I thought that was refreshing.
Yeah, I thought it was great. I thought it looked great. And I don't know what you feel, but I gotta say, Skeletor was freaking hilarious.
Listen,
I thought he was the best part of the movie.
Listen, I think people just like to hate on Jared Leto. I think
they do.
and myself included sometimes. Like
me too. Yeah, me too.
I think the gossip about who Jared Leto is behind the scenes bleeds into a lot of how we receive him on camera, because when you hear these stories about like he's on the set of Tron Ares and he's making everyone call him Ares, and it's like, but it's not that deep. It's Tron Ares.
It's like, not that hard of a character to play.
And it's not that crazy. And then, like, you know, it's like, in order to play the Joker, I've got to like send all my castmates a bunch. And it's kind of like, no, you don't. And you know, like, I think the lore of Jared Leto, the actor, gets in the way sometimes of how we take in his work on screen, because he turns in pretty solid work. And my thought about this character was the Leto haters were never going to cut him any slack. They were always going to go after him. And there's definitely a lot of people online who are like really coming for him in this performance. But my thought was like, if I remove everything I know about Jared Leto, if you didn't tell me it was Jared Leto in this role, no one would guess it.
I agree.
Like, you got to give it, and I get it. Obviously it's a digital face over his face, so you can't see who it is. But the vocal work was strong.
I loved it.
The characterization was strong. It seemed like the most fun I've seen Jared Leto have with a role in a very long time. I felt like he was having more fun doing this than he did with the Joker.
And his character is supposed to be like that. Like, I feel like he executed the character exactly how the script wanted it to be. And I honestly, like, this is literally his best performance that I've seen in years. In a long time.
I really was sitting there going, like, I'd seen a few things online of people really like dunking on him and talking about how annoying his voice was to listen to. And so I was sitting there in the theater and I was like, I think people just don't like Jared Leto, because if I didn't tell you Jared Leto was playing this, and you got to the end of the movie and saw his name, and you didn't know going in that it was him, I bet you would spend the entire movie going, who is that? Whoever's doing that is crushing it. And then if you saw his name, you'd go like, what? You know, like, it would blow the same way that, like, if you don't know it's Frank Langella in that 1987 movie, it shocks you. Like,
it does. Totally.
Yeah. When you find out it's Frank Langella, you're like, what? So I think like it's a similar kind of deal here. My general feeling is I was in a theater full of people who this movie seemed to work for them a lot better than it worked for me. My theater was having a great time.
Mine was too. They were
laughing and hooting and hollering, and I was trying to get into it. The jokes, for the most part, were like not landing for me. I feel like what it was when the end credits started to roll and I saw how many people collaborated on the script and the story, I went, that sounds right. It feels like a script that has one too many drafts and one. And I think that's like inevitable when you look at the 40-year saga of what it took to get from the movie we did earlier this year, Masters of the Universe 1987, to this film. When you look at like how many times this movie was almost made and then scrapped, how many millions of dollars were poured into production for this property over a 40-year span. It was inevitable that the script that finally got made was going to be kind of a Frankenstein amalgamation of all of these different tones that had been approached or tried or talked about in previous iterations. And even this movie feels like somebody wrote a treatment and a script. They brought in somebody else to maybe punch it up with jokes. They brought in somebody else to maybe help find the heart. And then they brought in somebody else to like work on the tone and make sure that the tone felt more even. And you get this thing that actually just winds up sort of, to me, feeling like it's at odds with itself in a lot of ways. Like it can't just commit to being one thing. And if this is the second movie, I'm not sure if it's the second or third movie. I think it's the second movie in the current like Mattel cinematic universe. If this is the like follow-up to Barbie, I think to me, like, this movie showed just how unlikely Barbie being as good as it was is. Like that, like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's really hard to take something that at its core isn't actually a story. It's just a toy line. It's just
Yeah.
it's a it's a
Yeah.
thing that like represents something to culture.
Mhm.
Barbie means something to a lot of people, but but there's no like you need to stick to the lore and the story of Barbie.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the hardcore Barbie fans aren't going to be happy. And it's similar with He-Man, even though there's the cartoon series. I don't think a lot of people like care as much about strict faithfulness to the cartoon as they do about does this feel like what He-Man felt like to me as a kid?
Yeah.
And maybe
Yeah.
that's the problem with that 1987 movie is it feels like it's too much. It just feels like
Yeah.
it's aping Star Wars too much.
Yeah.
Um, but
I
yeah.
sorry, go ahead and you can go.
Well, I was just gonna say that like with Barbie, they managed to both capture the feeling of what it
Yeah.
feels like to play with Barbies, and then they also did something on top of it, which was they executed this like really like on the nose, obvious social commentary, but they did a really good job of balancing that with like
Yeah.
a movie that was consistently very funny. Like the
Yeah.
humor had a clear voice, and I
Yeah.
think the script being a collaboration between Noah Baumbach and Greta Gerwig, who
Mhm.
are married,
Yeah. Yeah.
makes it's more cohesive.
Yes.
This movie wants to do the exact same thing where it wants to feel like what it feels like to play with He-Man toys. It
Mhm.
wants to make a social commentary about masculinity and about the way
Mhm.
that He-Man interacts with masculinity. And it also wants to have a comedic, like self-aware voice that's like
Yeah.
funny throughout.
Yeah.
But it's like the comedic voice seems like it can't really figure out what it wants to be exactly. Is it making
Yeah.
fun of He-Man or is it
Yeah.
making fun of itself for
Yeah.
existing? Is it just the characters in the world being funny? It's a little bit up and down. I feel like some of these things they got pretty right. The thing that I liked about the
Yeah.
movie is like it did sure feel like a bunch of action figures come to life. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
and it felt like little kids playing with their I liked the idea of Adam being like a little kid remembering,
Right. Right. Yeah.
and bringing that aspect in. But yeah, I don't know, like
Yeah.
it it's like it almost worked
Yeah.
really well.
I think it's a great description. It almost worked really well. I feel like they were going for the people who do this best are Lord and Miller. Lord and
Yeah.
Miller do the silly
Yeah, the Lego
silly
movie.
movies. Yeah, the Lego movie is the
Yeah.
perfect example that I was going to say. Like it's a perfect blend of silly but amazing storytelling and
Mhm.
a surprisingly big heart, right? And I feel like that's what this was trying to be. Also kind of like Guardians of the Galaxy. It never felt like a ripoff. I mean,
Yeah.
like it felt very similar in tone in many ways, but it just didn't really get there. And I
Right.
think like you said, it was close, but it wasn't really there.
I feel like this movie literally probably had notes where they were like, "We want you to try to do the Lord and Miller thing, that tone,
Yeah.
and also we want this to feel like it was directed by James Gunn." At least that's what like
Yes.
there was like
Yeah.
early on there were a lot of needle drops that felt very
Mhm.
Guardians of the Galaxy James Gunn ish,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I didn't mind the needle drops necessarily. I
No.
love dropping in Boys Don't Cry by The Cure, and
Yeah, right.
I love, obviously doing you know, What's Up
What's go
by or What's Going On,
What's going on by Four Non Blondes,
Four
right?
Non
Yeah.
Blondes. And like it's like yeah, and then like and doing the nod to the YouTube meme of He-Man with that, what they
Right.
were doing with that, right? You've seen those videos
Yes,
of
that's right.
yeah.
I've only seen that once, very
Yeah,
recently, but yeah,
yeah.
I forgot about it, but yeah, that's yeah.
But again, it's like I feel like the comedic voice in Barbie is consistent throughout. Like it's like
Yes,
know,
and this is, it's funny because He-Man, Barbie, Barbie, I don't know why Barbie and He-Man are very different,
right.
but they're also very similar. But like Barbie is very, you can reimagine Barbie so many different ways, and they've made so many different movies and animated TV shows and stuff like that. Like you can just reimagine her however you want. So it lends itself to having a movie that's very original. He-Man, even though first of all, they have these different cartoons that do have a lore, but it's not like a Marvel lore where like everyone knows what it is and everybody sticks to it because it started out as a story. Like you said, it starts out as a toy, but also like all the old cartoons and even the old movie are kind of have become a meme. Like they've just kind of become a funny thing. So this movie's trying to, self-reference all those things, and they're kind of trying to please everybody, and it ultimately ends up by not pleasing as many people as they probably wanted to. So they're trying to like honor the internet memes, but I almost feel like, again, if they were to honor the cheesiness of it, I feel like that might have been a little bit better route to go. But this movie could have been so much worse. Like
totally. Like a thought that I had in my head was when they did that kind of like gritty Power Rangers movie about 10 years ago.
Oh yeah.
And I remember seeing that and being like, this could have been a lot worse. Like for a Power Rangers movie, I remember my thought being like a Power Rangers movie 9 times out of 10 would be a lot worse than that. Not to say that that's a great movie, but it like works just well enough to be like, okay, guys, pretty decent job at adapting this property. And that's how I felt about this. I was like, this could have been a lot harder to watch.
Totally.
It's a pretty easy theater watch. It's not like aggressively, annoyingly bad. I think the self-awareness helps. But again, there's this weird thing where it's like some of the humor almost feels like the movie is embarrassed to be a He-Man movie.
Totally.
And where it's like, hey, feel free to wink at the audience about knowing how absurd all this is, but let the characters stand proud in who they are.
Exactly.
When the characters on screen are kind of going like, I know it's stupid, right? Like, like that to me goes like, well, but okay, we're talking spoilers in this episode, by the way. Spoiler alert. We have a spoiler-free version over on the channel if you want that. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, you don't want it spoiled. Spoilers for the rest of the episode. Spoiler alert. Like the choice to have Adam sort of name all of the characters as a kid and then have it be like names that he remembered for them, but not their actual names, so that they can justify. I didn't like that. I didn't, and I also didn't like that he calls himself He-Man at the that they do the like Fantastic Four thing where it's like, well, I had a name for myself, but like back then it's like, what is it? And he's like, you're gonna laugh at me, but it was He-Man. And then they're like, He-Man, and it's like, in the cartoon and in the 1987 Dolph Lundgren movie, like everyone just calls him He-Man, and no one, and it's just like, that's
agree.
That's just what his name is. And I feel like in universe, that should just be what his name is. Like that's just
this, and here's the difference. They're all making fun of him, right? And they're like, that's not my name. He's like, oh, you're Fisto, and he's like, that's not my name. But like, you can make it a different joke where it's Mechaneck, right? Which we all know is really dumb. But if you have the character like, my name's Mechaneck, I have a mechanical neck. What else? What other name would I want?
Right.
Like that's a funny, like he's owning it. Like it's ridiculous. We know, but he owns it. So we accept it. And
you could literally just like make it they're trying to do this sort of fish out of water thing where it's it's again going to Barbie, where it's like, we're gonna start off in Barbie land, but then Barbie's gonna go through a portal into the real world, and then we're gonna sort of do the funny joke of like, what happens when you bring the toy Barbie from the toy world into the real world. And we sort of do a reverse thing here where we sort of do a Superman thing where like Prince Adam from Eternia gets sent to Earth through a portal, which I will say this. I did like how many like references to the 1987 movie there were, because I felt like this portal was very evocative of the 1987 movie.
Oh, absolutely.
And I was like, oh, I'm totally getting the vibes.
I was too.
Of the portal from the 1987 movie. I love that we get Dolph Lundgren showing up in this movie. I did not expect that.
Oh, you didn't?
I did not expect a Dolph Lundgren cameo.
That's so funny. I was very much expecting that.
Oh, I was like, all right, okay, Dolph Lundgren's here. I like that at the beginning of the movie, the girl that he's on a date with is named Julie, which is
I didn't even notice that.
It's Courtney Cox's character from so like that was fun. But we do sort of a reverse thing where it's like Prince Adam is like Superman. He's been sent from a magical planet to Earth for his own safety. He grows up there. The problem with this kind of reverse fish out of water thing where he eventually goes back to Eternia is then when he's like talking to them about the way that he remembers them, and he's like, well, you're Fisto and you're, Mechanic, and you're like, and they're all like, what are you it's just like, but like I don't know, it's like, do you remember these people or not? And also like also that is their names. Like
I know.
your character's name is He-Man, and that's what they're named in the cartoon. And like that, I just think that I think there's a funnier joke if he's telling his friend on Earth, like, and there's this guy named Fisto, and his friend's like, what? And he's like, he's got a big fist, and he's like, Fisto. And if you do the thing where like maybe his friend gets sucked through has to go with him to Eternia. So his friend who never believed him is like a plucky sidekick for the whole movie. And he meets the people and he's like, so you actually are named Fisto? And the guy's like, what do you think?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. Then the characters own it and we respect them for it, even though we know it's ridiculous. Like, and they know I feel like that approach would have worked much better rather than my name's not Fisto. And I was like, well, then what's your name?
Right.
What is it?
Why is Skeletor still named Skeletor? Why is Trapjaw still named Trapjaw?
Yeah, and Evelyn is still Evelyn.
Exactly. So like if we're only for these characters going to be like pretty stupid that the guy's name is Mechanic, why is it stupid? He's got a mechanical neck.
Exactly.
Why is that stupid? What's Ramrod? Why is it stupid that his name is Ramrod? He rams things.
I know. Like, it's like Ram Man
or Ram Man, Ram Man, whatever his name is. But it's like why is that any dumber? Anyway, we still have to. It's still, and again, this just comes from it being a toy line first.
Totally.
It was a toy line first. It still doesn't make any sense to me, the lore of Eternia, that the castle is that there's Eternos, which is like the kingdom where Adam's parents and Prince Adam are from. But then like the special magic castle that is like the source of all power in Eternia is Grayskull. And Castle Grayskull, there's just no two ways about it. Just looks like Skeletor's castle.
It's just totally what it is. That's totally what it looks like.
It's so weird to have the main bad guy of this universe be a talking skeleton guy with a skull for a face. And they mention this in the movie. They're like he's got a skull for a face. Like they make jokes about it. But I'm like, but no one if we're gonna be doing all this self-referential stuff, no one mentions the fact that like, I don't know, Grayskull has a giant skeleton as a face, as a door.
Yeah.
How is Grayskull the good guy's castle?
And we talked about that in the 87 version, and they didn't do anything with it. I thought they would at least make a reference of like, this looks like Skeletor's castle, right? Like, and
again, if you bring a friend from Earth with Adam back to Eternia, you know what? I'm sitting here, I just thought about it just now. It's like, why even have the roommate character if you're not going to do like the thing about Adam on Earth is he doesn't really have a lot of friends. Like nobody really gets him. He kind of can't stop himself from telling everyone about his childhood in Eternia. And it is weird that like he has not been committed, that like no one has been like has been like, my friend is going through a psychotic episode. He thinks that, like his roommate sort of casually is like, well, I think that your parents died in a traumatic event, and to understand that event, you've created the lore of this whole place. But it's like, but what you're talking about is like severe mental illness. Like your roommate and friend is not well. He believes that he's from another planet, and but they treat it just sort of as like this funny thing that but it's like, we could do something with that if his friend, if like his car doesn't work, like he's gonna go pick up the sword from the comic book, and his car doesn't work, and he has to call his roommate to give him a ride to the comic book shop, and then his roommate's there when the Wolfman shows up, and and his roommate, so his roommate's like, this is real, and then we get to experience the whole weirdness of Eternia through the eyes of someone who didn't think.
And that is pretty much that's kind of a trope, but honestly, it would work so well for this. Like when tropes are fine if you do them well, and if you can add something interesting to them. And I think that would have helped for sure. Because
the roommate could just be like, wait, sorry, that castle right there is not the skeleton guy's castle.
Exactly.
And they're like, because like the characters in universe should not think there's anything weird about, like they shouldn't be confused as to why his name is Fist. It's just
it's just how it is there. That's their way of doing things.
Yeah. So you mentioned pacing.
Yes.
One thing about the way this movie is structured is we have a little prologue in Eternia where we see Adam as a young boy and we get to meet Man of Arms, and and I was glad that we like got into an action sequence fairly quickly.
And it was very entertaining action sequence.
I did like this action sequence, and I liked the way it was shot. I liked the way that the choreography was executed. I thought Idris Elba was doing good work. I liked this fight between him and Trapjaw right away. I thought Skeletor was like funny and fun and cool. Again, I liked the way that the world of Eternia is very colorful and looks like action figures, and they're not trying to like they're not trying to do like a grounded, gritty version of it. They're I think that's all really fun. But I still was like, when they sent him off to Earth, immediately I was like, okay, how long is it going to take to get him back there and get him? Because I was like, I don't want this movie to take too long to get to He-Man. Like one of my favorite things about James Gunn's Superman is I'm just like, I love that we just start with like, oh cool, he's Superman,
already there.
Let's go. And I will say this movie moved through its like first act at a nice clip. It got us back to Eternia faster than I thought it would. But even that sort of became a problem for me, because then a lot of the stuff with Adam on Earth just felt like it was kind of rushed through. It just sort of felt like, and I was like, not that I want to spend more time there, but it just is that section now becomes kind of a problem in the movie, where it's like, we've got this whole thing here where Adam the Earthling has to suffer the indignity of like not being believed by other Earthlings, and he's got to find the sort of power and all this stuff. But like we sort of we sort of are moving through that really fast, because if this were a mini series, that would be like a whole, like that would be like the whole first episode, or like two, like the first episode might end with him getting the text that's like, I found your sword. And I don't know.
I think it is a it is strange, because like he has to go back to Earth, but I mean, did they need to do that? I don't know. Because I agree with you. It's kind of like, if they would have brought his roommate, then there's a little bit more of a connection to Earth that helps the story feel more cohesive. Because as it is now, like they don't ever go back to Earth. They're done. And it wasn't the biggest deal, but I agree. Like it's just kind of a weird section. And this is the thing that really bothered me about the movie throughout the entire movie. There's a lot of I don't even know how to say it, and I've seen this a lot recently in TV shows and in movies, but like they do whatever they need to do to get the plot across. And like the dude's like, oh, I'll give you the sword for $300, and he goes and sees the guy, but the guy doesn't take any money. And how does that guy, like, what's the point? And
who is that guy?
Who, like, what is the point of this? Like, what it seems to be just to kind of get the plot going. And then there's like, when he sees his dad later on, which we'll get to more, and like he has this moment with his dad, Skeletor and Evelyn were like right next to him. What are they doing?
It was such a long scene with him and his dad.
Why are they not destroying? Why are they not trying to kill him? What are they doing? Like, and the sword is sitting on the ground and nobody else is trying to grab it. They just have action. Like, what is going on?
It's always crazy when action scenes just sort of pause for two characters to have like a really, like when like they'll do this a lot. The trope happens a lot in like battle scenes where it's like a big crazy battle's going on, and then like two characters stop and have like a really emotional moment while the battle rages on around them. And the suspension of disbelief there is like, okay, I guess we can pretend that in this little pocket, they're like maybe down and like, and they're sort of like not moving. So everyone's so preoccupied with fighting each other still that there's a little beat where they're able to talk to each other.
A little beat.
Yeah, but this is a room that only has He-Man and his dad, Evelyn and Skeletor in it, and they're all just like standing watching him talk to his dad for like
what are they
5
doing?
minutes. And and I'm just like, what's going on? Like what like at least movie, it's like have Skeletor and Evelyn like run away or something, you know, like have them like they leave, you know, and so he get like, or he takes the sword and he like knocks them out of the, I don't know, something.
Something like something falls and they're trapped for a little bit and they can't get to him.
Right.
And then they
but this
give
was
a reason for them not doing anything, because they don't give a reason for it.
Yeah, this was like in Mortal Kombat 95 that we just watched, when Liu Kang and Shang Tsung fight at the end, and the other characters are just in the room watching it, but we never go back. We never see them. We just the room just starts to feel like there's only 2 people in it, but it's like we know that the other 3 characters are just standing there, and it's like, what are they doing?
What are you doing? No, and what's happening? That happened throughout this whole movie. That they would do things. I was like, you guys are taking too long.
Yeah,
like I can suspend my disbelief that like, oh, there was a rock fall, so Skeletor and Evelyn are you know, incapacitated for 30 seconds, maybe, but no, this was like minutes long that he like has this moment with his dad.
You've got like a few seconds to have a moment with your dad here, and have the dad say like one thing that's going to be like, oh, that like, find the one line, the one thing that his dad could say to him.
Well,
that would be, you know,
like, why, you know, what he should have said. Well, no, I guess that was Man at Arms or whatever. Like, he should have said something along the lines of what Dune says, which is like, no, you've been my son, and
that's
I've
all I ever
always
needed
loved
you to be.
Yeah, exactly, right? But no, he's like, oh, I grew up, and he's like, yeah, you're so big, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you're like having a conversation, like, there's
like,
2 other people that want to murder
really
you right
you,
now.
Son? It is me, Dad. It is me. It can't be. Oh, Dad, look, I grew up. I'm a man now. No, son, I didn't want you to be like that. I just meant I wanted you to be safe. I am safe, Dad. No, but I do. Oh, I love you.
It was
I'm like,
so weird.
What is? But also, that this is a thing of the tone of this movie fighting itself, because the movie wants to be kind of like self-aware and having fun with its concept. But then there were several scenes, like there's a scene earlier with Man at Arms and Adam that's like really emotional, and like where they're like crying, and it felt like the movie wanted like the audience to go, and I just was like, guys, I don't think it's that kind of a movie. I think that like you gotta like I sort of left the theater going, even though there were sequences in this movie that were very fun, I really like the first time that Adam turns into He-Man, and like,
oh, totally, it was
like
great.
I thought that was awesome, and like I thought like a lot of the sequences where he is He-Man are very fun.
Oh yeah,
and you know,
great
I
fight
thought
choreography.
The character design was great. Like it was very, but I was kind of like, I almost want to see a version of this movie where He-Man totally takes himself seriously as He-Man, but the movie's still very funny. Where like where all of these characters are like really taking seriously like what is going on, but in a way that like where the movie knows how ridiculous it is.
Yes.
Because I'm like, inherently
that's what I'm wanting as well.
Yeah, like inherently this universe is ridiculous, but I don't think that the characters should be like, I know, isn't this so weird? Like, isn't it like the characters themselves should have a lot of pride in their Eternian clothing, and their Eternian names, and their, you know, and their Eternian culture. And if you want to like just have the one character who's not from there who can maybe point out like how weird this stuff is, but also you don't even necessarily need that character.
No,
you can just have a movie that's just like having fun with the absurdity of its maximalism. And
that's
I don't
exactly what I was hoping for.
Yeah,
but that's not what we got. It's the not sure, really, like not knowing what it wants to be, and like poking fun at it instead of owning it.
I saw someone say that it almost feels like that early 2000s era of superhero movies that like didn't just want to lean into the fact that they were based on comic books. So when they would make the movie version, they would be like, cool, well, we have to sort of do like a self-aware joke about the, you know, like, so like when Wolverine in the 2000 X-Men movie says like, you know, like nice outfits. And the guy goes, what were you expecting? Yellow spandex. And it's sort of like this joke about his costume but it's kind of like, why not yellow spandex? I don't know. It's a superhero movie. Why not? And even when we finally got the Wolverine costume in Deadpool and Wolverine and how cool it looked, they still had to make a joke about it and be like, finally a movie that's not embarrassed to be a superhero movie. But it's like, like, again, that's what one thing I like about James Gunn's Superman is I feel like it's the first time I've watched a Superman movie that was just like, what if we don't feel the need to apologize for the concept being what it is? What if we just let Superman be Superman? What if we just let him be corny? Like,
exactly,
you know, like, and he's not winking at the audience about how corny he is. We're letting other people sort of roll their eyes at how corny Clark is and how, you know, and I feel like you could do that with this movie where it's like, let Adam because the character He-Man in the cartoons is very like, oh, well, I'm here, you know, but even Adam as a character, every time he turns into He-Man, he seems unsure of what to do with it. He's like looking at himself like, whoa, like what I look, it seems like a guy who's not He-Man is put into the body of He-Man. And I want to see the movie where he turns into He-Man and he's just He-Man, you know, like he's, you know what I mean? Like, instead of being a guy who's like, I look like this now, I guess I'm wearing these clothes.
He should like, oh, this is how I've always should be. You know, I always should have been like this. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I don't know. It's like, I just feel like there's gotta be a way to have the character not be so removed from the, you know, like where he's like, whoa, this is crazy. Like, you're telling me I'm this guy? And it's like, well, yeah, but you always knew you were. Like, you never forgot that you were Prince Adam. And I think, I don't know, like I don't know. It always kind of bothers me too when movies like don't get to, you know, like the fact that he doesn't call himself He-Man to the very end. I'm like, I'm glad that he had the costume on by about the midpoint.
Yes, it was.
And I'm glad that he spent a good amount of the movie in the costume doing cool stuff with the sword. But I wish that, and I did like the final fight scene with him and Skeletor where he like unleashes on it.
Oh yeah, that was awesome. Yeah, that was great.
I thought that was really fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like the only characters in the movie that are really unashamed and unembarrassed to be themselves are the bad guys. Are Trapjaw and Evelyn and Skeletor. Like they are just who they are.
Yeah.
And I wish that all the characters were more like that.
I agree. That would have been what I preferred. Now they didn't do that. So, but at least it's still fun. I mean, he does ultimately find the sword in a weird way. I thought it wasn't going to be the real sword, like, but it ends up being.
It looks like plastic when you first see it.
Yeah,
you know?
I was kind of like, is that the sword? Like, I thought he was gonna look and it was gonna say made in China or made in Taiwan or something. You know, some sort of different country that would prove that it's not the real sword, but that someone has it. But
someone based this one off of the mold of the original. I'll say that actually there were a lot of shots with the sword and with like Idris Elba's armor like close up where I just was like, this looks like spray painted plastic. Like it
does. Yeah. There were times
and again, I go back to the 1987 movie and I'm like, Dolph Lundgren's sword and that looks like a real sword. And this sword looks like it's been spray painted with like metallic chrome. It looks a little, it just, you know,
that's why. I kept thinking like, is that really the sword? But apparently it was.
But he sends up a signal so the Eternians show up. And again, every time I felt like the movie was slowing down and I was like, let's go, they would like, boom, here's the next thing. And they would move it to the next thing. But but then it was a little bit like, okay, maybe we're just overloaded with too much stuff here, and we're not actually letting moments breathe because we've got. And again, this is a problem with too many writers. But they go back to Eternia, him and his friend Tila,
which I mean, when what is Animal Man or whatever he shows up, I thought he looked great.
Yeah, and again, all these like digital characters, like immediately I was like, looks pretty good. Looks honestly,
and it was a fun thing. The thing that I also didn't love about this is like they tried to make Adam when he's not He-Man look like he's skinny and scrawny, and I'm like, that I'm not buying that.
I wasn't buying it.
The dude's ripped under his shirt, like,
right?
They were wears like a big sweater, like when he's working out with like a cat on. I'm like, dude, that's not working.
Well, and they tried to make it look at the gym like he couldn't really lift weights. He couldn't do
anything.
I was like, guys,
when he's always tired running with the sword and like,
I'm like, guys, I can see that he's jacked underneath those clothes.
Like,
it's not like what they did with Steve Rogers in Captain America, where they just digitally, and it's like, maybe it should have been like, maybe you should have done like a,
or you make him very physically fit, but he's not He-Man.
I did
like you can make him weaker, but still have him be strong.
He doesn't have to. Yeah, he doesn't have superpowers.
Exactly.
Because Prince Adam in the cartoon was still like a big guy when he wasn't. When he wasn't in the, but the fact that the movie wanted to be like he's a weakling when it's like, I don't think so.
That didn't work for me. Yeah,
and I will say that it did feel like, I don't know if they did this, but it did feel like there was a bulkiness that was extra when he was He-Man. And I don't know if they shot it like a few months apart, where they were like, hey, we're gonna have you like get pretty big and we're gonna shoot all the Atom stuff, and then we're gonna see if we can have you gain like 20 more pounds and shoot all the He-Man stuff, because he did.
I don't think they did, but I could be wrong.
To my eye, and maybe it's just because he had no clothes on, but to my eye, I was like, he does look like slightly bigger. But
I think it was just they kind of gave him clothes that were too big. And then he just like really, because
I'll say this too. He looks great. The costume design's great, but I think this goes to show like Dolph Lundgren had a body that was,
dude, it's unreal.
It's like Dolph Lundgren's body really was crazy, because no shade to what's his name, Galatzine or what?
Jonathan. Oh my gosh,
he looks
Nicholas
he looks pretty good. It's just it's not quite as cut. It's not quite as defined as like Lundgren, dude. Like he's just cut out of marble.
Really.
But Nicholas Galatzine's definitely a better actor.
He is. Not that he was amazing, but he did a lot better. That's for sure. Yeah. Gwildor, you need
Gwildor. Good journey. Hey,
good journey.
Good journey.
We got that before. But they do go back to Eternia. What's her name shows up? I forgot.
Tila.
By Camila Mendez.
Yeah, everything's bad now. Skeletor's basically just laid waste to all of Eternia. Mm-hmm. I do kind of like just the fun of Skeletor being like, I'm bad because I'm bad.
Yeah, I like that too.
And again, I feel like the movie could have more fun with themes like this, where things are really simplified, where it's just like the bad guys are bad because they're bad. And even the good guys could do that too, where they'd be like, well, we're good. We're the good guys,
Yeah, exactly.
And
there's like no nuance.
Yeah, and I like that. That's a thing that the Barbie movie does well too, where it's just sort of like, well, you're Ken, you're my boyfriend. And it's like, but they don't really know what that means. It's just sort of like, that's just the role that's assigned to them. It's like, we're all happy all the time. The Kens are our boyfriends, and that's just, and we don't know what that means. But
exactly.
Yeah. But I feel like you could do something fun with that, where it's like the people of Eternia have never had to like actually grapple with like moral gray areas, or it's always been really clear,
like good black guys and white.
And
I think that could have made, I think that could have been really interesting. I think that could have been good, but they get back and then like nobody believes that he's Adam, right? He's the prince's son, and they get thrown in jail, which I was like, why are they in jail? But they get thrown in jail, and Man-at-Arms is in there, and he's like a drunk, and then the robot is in there, which I guess was voiced by Kristen Wiig, which I've forgotten, but fine. And then Skeletor comes, and this is when Adam becomes He-Man the first time.
Yeah.
He says the phrase, and then he
Which
becomes He-Man.
it's an objectively silly phrase to
It
say,
is.
by the power of Grayskull, I have the power.
Yeah, I know. It really.
By Grepthar's hammer, I have a hammer.
Exactly. Yeah, and he does, but then he has this really cool fight. But this is again a cool fight with what is it? Lockjaw. What's the guy's name again?
Yeah, Lockjaw.
Is it Lockjaw?
Trapjaw.
Trapjaw. He has that whole thing, and he's like, he's fighting him, and all these other guys are trying to fight him, and he's lost the sword at one point, and the sword's just sitting there. You can see it the whole time, and like no one thinks to pick it up. Right. Like but the action scene
just
is really
seems like
cool.
there should be some kind of hot potato with this sword if it's so important. And
couldn't they be like sniping guys who are trying to get it, like Tila and
Man
at Arms or something?
That's the other thing, is all the other characters just back off and they just watch. And it's like, why aren't you helping? Why aren't you getting involved? But where's we have like a few team up scenes in this movie, but for the most part, there's a lot of like characters who are just sort of isolated on the fringes, like who have nothing to do. And stuff like that, where it's like, oh, this important MacGuffin prop is over here and no one's noticing it. Or
and he's like, Skeletor's like knows that he has a sword, so I don't know. But they get away, they fly away, and they have the chase.
This was probably my least favorite action scene in the movie.
Mine
I think it's just the most cartoony and
a little generic. Like nothing too amazing happens,
and it feels too long too. Like it feels like it goes on for too long. This chase scene through the woods, and I think I just mean cartoony in a way that like everything sort of looked a little like Ant-Man Quantumania, like where it's just sort of like generic, like CGI bleep bloop things, like, and nothing's really specific. And then also like we're playing kind of fast and loose with what are the parameters of He-Man's power, because sometimes He-Man's just like, I'm powerful enough to like punch really hard and lift heavy things. But then when like he grabs the blades of this thing, I was like, that seems like Superman level strength. And I'm not sure what level of strength, because then 2 seconds later he lifts something up and he's like, this is pretty heavy. And I'm like, well, you just stopped like these massive spinning blades that I don't know, but
and they also, he falls like, I don't know, 100 feet and hits branches and huge trees, and
he's fine.
He's okay.
Which again, it's like, hey, if we're doing power of a god, if we're doing he's Thor, he's Superman, then like cool, but then the ship shouldn't be heavy. Like he shouldn't be like, this is actually heavy, like it's always, super strength is always a weird thing, because you're like, well, what is it? What is it? Is it Mr. Incredible super strength, or is it like the Hulk super strength? Like what level are we talking here?
But they get away, they have a moment, and I felt like this storyline wasn't really resolved that well, but like Tila has some problems with her dad, and like, because he's kind of a washed up drunk and she doesn't want him to drink anymore, and but it never seems to get resolved.
No, and neither does the romantic tension between Tila and Adam either, and that also just seemed weird. It just seemed like Adam wanted something that was not there. It didn't seem like a will they won't they thing. It seemed like Tila was very clearly being like, I see you as a friend, and like, which would mean any future romantic thing that happens between them in future movies would be like, she started this off by being like, hey man, you're my friend, and I'm glad we're friends, and and I don't, it was just a weird thing where I was like, I don't think we need that. Again, in the 1987 movie, I'm like, I'm glad we don't have any weird romantic shenanigans between He-Man and anybody. I'm glad He-Man's just being He-Man. It
was a weird thing. And then Skeletor shows up in the sky, kind of like in the 87 version. And he's like, you butt worms or whatever. And it's like, did he just call us butt worms?
He's like, you are but worms beneath my feet. Did he just call us butt worms? The
way they said it,
and again, I don't mind jokes like that. Like
I thought that was funny.
I think that's like a good like Guardians of the Galaxy style joke. I think that was one of the jokes that got me to laugh. But again, it's like, I think that like the characters should just be funny like that, rather than the jokes all being like, "Oh, isn't it weird that we're in a He-Man? Like, I'm in my underwear now." It's like, don't like, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
And he's got to go to Snake Mountain,
yeah.
and they go to Snake Mountain, and this is another really cool fight scene because
Mhm.
he's got to fight all the big guys, the dude with the horns, and
For a
he's got to
second, I
fight.
thought this was the climax. Did you?
It, I didn't think it was a climax because I
Yeah.
knew there were a few other things, but it was. I figured that Dad was gonna die just
Yeah.
because it was like this is kind of a pivotal moment, but I also
Also,
knew that he
there's
was
no
gonna fail.
reason there's no reason why Skeletor has kept these two alive for as long as he has.
No reason other than to keep the plot going.
Yep.
Like and so I knew that he was gonna fail because I was like, okay, we just had the midpoint. He's gotta fail because he hasn't learned the lesson
Right.
yet, you know.
Right.
So he goes in a really cool fight scene. Probably a little too long. Like this was the pacing thing. Like
Yeah.
they'd have these story moments within the fight scene, and it was kind of like, all right, this shouldn't move this way. But
Let's go.
yeah, he has
Dad
this
dies.
scene.
Let's move on. Yeah. He's
Yeah,
captured. He's in jail. Let's go. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. So like he has this weird scene with his dad where Skeletor and Evelyn just watch for some reason.
Yep.
But then like he loses the sword and he gets taken, and now he's back in his regular clothes, and they're all put in prison
Wh-
with
What did you?
everybody else, right?
Yeah. What did you think of Alison Brie as Evelyn? Because I kind of felt like this character was absolutely nothing.
I absolutely agree. I thought she was wasted. I
Just
feel like
felt like
her
they gave her
talent was
nothing to
wasted.
do.
Yep, they didn't do anything with her because I
Yeah.
like Allison Brie. I
I
think
felt
she's
like
really funny.
I felt like she was trying really hard
Yes,
to make something happen, and they
yes,
just didn't have anything for her to do.
yeah. I just and
Yeah.
also like you could make her a stronger character. Like she's a sorceress. Like
Yeah, they instead
use
they
her
sort of
magic more.
they made her like this sniveling henchman who's
Yeah.
just sort of like there to like appease Skeletor's ego. But
Yes,
I feel like they could have made her more menacing.
they could have.
And I feel like again, like these characters take themselves seriously, and that's what's funny.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
But
yeah,
she seemed like she weirdly she seemed like a character who like didn't really like being part of the bad guy team, and I don't it yeah, or some I don't know, it was weird.
yeah. It wasn't.
But
It didn't work that great. But
yeah,
they're in jail, and then like
they're all down on themselves, but then
yeah.
Adam gives them a pep talk, and he sort of like he reminds them all who they are, and that's
Well,
when he
and
gets
he meets his mom, and that was just like flew way under the radar for
yeah,
me. Like he's like,
yeah,
"Oh, mom," and then she like goes away and never comes back.
right.
And like
Yeah.
so,
Yeah,
oh
they
well.
kept trying to have these emotional beats with, like, his
Yeah.
parents and with,
Yeah.
and it just also, there was this weird thing, I forgot to mention this, earlier when, like, he's having, like, an emotional conversation with Man-at-Arms,
Mhm.
uh, and because Man-at-Arms is, like, down on himself, like, "I failed my daughter, I let her down,"
Yeah.
and he tells him, he's like, "Hey, when I was a kid, you taught me that when I fall down, like, that's a good chance to learn how that I need
Yeah.
to stand back up and be tall," and then he's like, "Also, like, like, were, like, really rude to me and destroyed my sense of
Yeah.
confidence and my
Yeah.
self-esteem." And then they make this joke a few different times about, like, how rude Man-at-Arms was to him when he was a kid,
Yeah.
and I'm like, "That's not what the prologue showed at all." The
No.
prologue showed that the Man-at-Arms was one of the only people who was nice to Adam.
Yes.
And
I
then
thought the exact same thing.
they made this big, like, joke as adults where he was like, "You were also, like, pretty cruel to me and kind of destroyed my self-confidence and destroyed my sense of
Yeah.
self." He's like, "But, like, you were a good teacher." But it's like, no, what you showed us in the
Yeah.
edit, and it made me wonder, like, was there a different version that again, too many
Yeah.
writers where
Maybe.
it felt like a leftover of a different draft because he said this
Yeah.
line and I was like, "That's not what happened."
I know. I was like, I never got that from what you showed me.
He was like, "A lot of people were mean to you as a kid. A lot of people, like,
Yeah.
looked down on you. The one person who was nice to you and believed in you was Man-at-Arms and your mom."
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. That was weird. But
yeah.
they
Anyway, he gives a pep talk to the team. They break out of jail together. They break the bars down. They
yeah.
escape. He's got to go, get the sword back because they've taken the sword to Castle Grayskull. So they've got
Yeah,
to,
because Skeletor tried to use it and it didn't work, and it
yeah.
was it was funny
Now they're
again.
gonna do like a ritual to get it to
Yeah,
work
they
or
got to go
something.
to Castle Grayskull, and
Yeah. Also, like, like the fact that like the tiger here is like all shy and like, I don't want to go into battle.
I
And then
know.
he's like,
Well, and he
fine,
just like shows up, and I was like, why wasn't he there earlier? But
right. And then he's like, well, next time I'm wearing armor, and they're doing the whole
yeah,
like, not yet. And I'm like, why not?
I
Why not?
know.
Why not
Give him the armor. Just give him the armor.
have him be a battle tiger
Yeah.
who this is what he does, and put the armor on. Let's
Yeah.
go. Like, it took us 40 years to get this movie, and you're still like, well, we don't want to do it too much. I'm like, just go. Like, just
give us what you've already given. You're already giving us what we want. Give it all to us.
yeah, let's go. Like, do it,
Yeah.
but
Totally.
even I didn't love the back and forth of this final set piece that like we're split between Adam fighting Skeletor in the throne room and this big battle going on outside, and there's like sort of a final showdown between Man at Arms and Trapjaw. And there, but like it again, this was a pacing thing where it felt like we weren't cutting back and forth at like a good speed. It was like we would spend too much time on something else. So you'd be like, hold on, let's get back to the other thing now. And it's like, if you want to do this sort of cross-cutting between two, which is fine. They do this all the time in action movies where it's like, well, there's this fight going on over here in this part of the map. And there's this fight going on over here. But I was like, we just need to go back and forth a little faster. Like the movie would kind of stop and get stuck in one spot. And then, I did like this sequence in the throne room where Skeletor is going through Adam's memories, and I thought that was kind of I thought it was kind of fun.
It was fun. It was, and I mean, it was ridiculous, and they leaned into it. It was funny though. Like, he grabs his head, he goes through his memories. They're at the gym first, and Skeletor is first of all in a Nike hoodie, which Travis Knight is the director, son of what's his name? Son of
Phil Knight
Phil Knight, who owns Nike and who started Nike.
Yeah.
And also earlier on in the movie, Beast Man is chasing them and he gets hit by a Prime truck.
Yeah.
Which I was like,
Amazon saves the day.
I was like, really? Come on. It wasn't anywhere near as bad as War of the Worlds, but I was like, oh, come on.
Yeah.
Like, that was so intentional.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, for sure.
I'm sure that was like, you guys have got to put this in there. And
but also like that one, I almost was kind of like, okay, that was like almost like Amazon doing a joke, like almost being like, hey,
kind of. Yeah.
It's an Amazon MGM movie, and like we're gonna be like, hey,
but even still, again, like that's like Amazon saves the day in War of the Worlds. Like, I know. Oh, give them a gift card to Amazon.
It's it's ridiculous. Also,
don't do that crap, Amazon. That's dumb.
Also, we have the same problem. Like the lore and world building of Eternia still sort of evades me, and it's the same problem that we have with Masters of the Universe 1987, which is that Skeletor seems plenty powerful without the Sword of Power.
Exactly.
He seems like the most supernaturally powerful being in Eternia, even without the sword. And he seems like a pretty good match for He-Man, even without the super strength. And when Skeletor in 1987 movie, Skeletor actually gets to have the sword works for him,
right?
And he takes the power of Grayskull, but it doesn't change his power. Like, he doesn't change. He just turns into this like gold version of himself, but he doesn't have any new powers. And like watching his powers in this one, that it's like he's got this staff that's like really powerful and can zap people. He can like go into people's memories by putting his hand on their head. He's really strong and jacked. And I'm like, what? Like, why does he need the power of this sword? He's already won the war and taken over Eternia, but whatever. I do like when, Adam, he kills Adam. He stabs him with a broken version of the
sword
the sword of power, which I thought was kind of cool. But I like the Adam sort of, like Neo in the Matrix, comes back to life and becomes the one, and basically has his like Neo beating up Agent Smith moment where he just like goes ham on Skeletor, and this was fun.
Yeah, it was fun. It was good, and I liked the like I said, I like that flashback scene. I think that even though how ridiculous it was set up with how ridiculous Skeletor already was. But when Adam dies, he has a really long sequence with the sorceress, and that was one that I was like, all right, we can move this along. Like,
this
You
should
need to
be
just give me like 2 lines that she
exactly.
tells
It's
him.
too long of a conversation. Yeah,
Yeah.
yep, for sure.
But he does, and then he totally goes off on Skeletor and kills Skeletor. He
What you
tries to talk to him first, I guess, but
I did like that too. I liked that. I
yeah,
again, this movie's trying to make a commentary on masculinity and
right,
like
right.
and all this stuff. And Adam kind of goes, "Hey, I'm actually rather than fighting you, I'm gonna say like, what gives, man? Because
Yeah,
on Earth he was an HR guy and he tried
yeah,
to learn some conflict
mhm,
resolution skills.
yeah,
And he
yeah.
tries to talk to him, and Skeletor's like, "Dude, you're not gonna talk me."
Yeah, he's like, "I'm evil."
Yeah,
Like,
and then he's just like, "Okay, well then, have it your way," and he, beats the crap out of him.
yeah.
What did you think about the sheer volume of phallic jokes in this movie?
Okay. Yes, and the kind of like
We gotta talk about the dick jokes. There's a lot of
yeah,
them.
it
There's a
was
lot of them.
so I know, I kept like so I went
There's,
with
like,
my
more than I
son.
expected. Like, there were
There
a
was
lot.
way more than it was all definitely some sort of, like, implications of homoerotic something going on, like, it was something very strange that,
Especially
like
with Skeletor.
with Skeletor specifically, he's
Skeletor was,
like
like, very, like, turned on by Adam
yeah,
and,
he's
like,
like,
and the yeah.
he's talking about his beautiful his gorgeous thighs or his magnificent thighs
Your
and
magnificent thighs with that
with
long,
long
beautiful
dangling
sword
sword.
dangling between your I was like, "Dude, what?"
I know. So I went with my son and my friend, and I was like looking at my friend, and he was like,
But at some point,
"What the
someone's
heck?"
also like, when you take your sword of power in your hands, or like when
Yeah,
Fisto did the joke where he's like, it only looks smaller in my hand because my hand's so big, and he's like, my hand's big, that's why it looks small in my hand,
yeah.
and but it's not small, and I was like, man, they're really doing a lot of
Well,
these.
and he's like, like, "Oh, you fist people," and it was
Yeah,
like they had a lot of innuendo, which
uh-huh,
I it was I think it went over my son's head, but
yeah,
it was a lot more, and I was like, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. I don't know if it was really necessary,
it was a
but
lot.
it was a lot.
And again, I think I would like it more if if the characters were just saying stuff like that, but they were like dead serious.
Like
And
Tobias Funke?
exactly,
Yes.
exactly like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Where like they're not aware of the double entendre of what they're saying,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
like I think it would be a
Yeah.
lot funnier that
I
way.
think
And
it probably
I
would.
think the
Yeah.
movie would be more fun. I just think a version like again, this movie's a lot better than it could have been. It could
Yes.
have been a
Yes.
lot worse.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that work just fine. I just think that like tonally it's a little uneven. It
Yes.
takes too much time with some of these emotional beats in the middle of action sequences where you're like, come on, let's keep the pace going. Let's keep it moving. Um and then some of the humor, it's sort of like I think this would be overall really fun if the movie was just like a bunch of like jacked action figure looking
Yeah. Yeah.
guys
Yeah.
in these crazy fight scenes, taking themselves really seriously and just like
Yeah.
saying things that are ridiculous and
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
having fun with the absurdity of it and
Exactly.
not
Yeah.
constantly having to turn to the audience and going,
Yeah.
don't worry, we know, we know.
Yeah. Which and
Yeah.
actually, so when the trailer came out, we reviewed it, right?
Hmm.
And I was wondering how Skeletor was going to look
Hmm.
with his talking. And I want to know how you feel, but honestly, it very much did not bother me.
I really liked it. I really liked even like this anamorphic lens thing that they did with his eyes,
Oh,
where
totally.
every time they were doing like
Right.
the close up of his eyes, you sort of had this like light
Lens flare,
lens
like thing
flare
going
thing.
on.
I
Yeah.
thought it was really cool.
I did.
I just
The,
liked the whole design of Skeletor. I was like, if
I
I
did
was a
too. And
yeah,
it like they move his mouth in a way that gives it some shape. There were some times where it kind of did like an O shape and his teeth kind of I was like, oh,
yeah,
teeth don't move that way. So
yeah,
that was a little weird. But overall, I was like, no, this is great. I actually think the way that they did it was really, I really, really, I mean, honestly, I really like Skeletor. I
yeah.
thought
Me too.
he was the best part of the movie.
Me too.
And it's funny
Yeah,
that they like in the trailers, they give off kind of a funny tone, but it's not the tone of the movie is way more silly and way more funny than it's really advertising.
yeah, yeah. But pretty fun. And so like he kills
Yep.
Skeletor. He
Yep.
brings his friend to Eternia. They make
For
some more
like
jokes about
yeah.
everybody's names.
And they laugh like,
yeah,
they do that thing,
yep.
which was
And
kind of
then
dumb.
which that was like again, and I'm like, hey, if that's the tone of this movie, let's see more of that because that also kind
Yeah,
of came
yeah.
out of nowhere.
That
That was
yes, that
like
would have been better if that's how the whole movie was.
yeah, they have this like little beat at the end where like it literally looked like Travis Knight told the actors like, "Hey, just sort of improvise, but be
Yeah,
like really over the top jovial." And it's this
yeah.
scene where Fisto's like, "That moment where you took that guy and killed him." Ha 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 ha. Ha. They're like, "Yes, you killed him. Good." Ha
Yes.
ha ha.
Well,
Ha.
I think that's how
Like,
the shows ended. They would always laugh like that. Like that's
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And so and it's like, cool, this should be the tone of the whole movie.
It
Everyone
should have.
should just
Yeah,
be like over the top silly, doing
totally.
ridiculous character work. But they
And
do a few more jokes about everybody's names. They set up a sequel.
yeah, they do.
The
And
end.
we didn't talk about this, but
Yeah.
we've got to talk about this. Dude, the score was awesome. I
The
thought the
score
score was so good.
the score
Like,
was awesome. I will say the motif, the Brian May
yes,
guitar motif,
from Queen, yeah.
I felt like happened like 4 or 5 too many times for me
I
because it
can
was just
see that. Yeah,
it was too
I agree.
short. So it was like this one really sick little riff that they had that they were really
Yeah.
excited about, and they just kept dropping it in like all the time at
Yeah, it
like
was a little
every
too much. They could have
a-
used it a
a-
little more
and I was
seldom.
like,
Yeah.
or I just was like, I wish there was a little more variety here
Yeah.
with this
Yeah, I
thing.
could see that.
But
But I felt like it captured
yeah,
the feel that they were going for,
yeah, it was
and
fun.
like it was a lot. I thought it worked really, really well. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, it was definitely fun.
Yeah.
And there's some fun needle drops and like
Yeah,
yeah.
there are. And did you stay for all 3 of the post-credit
There's
scenes?
another one. I saw 2 of them.
There's yeah.
What's the
So
last one?
I didn't stay for the last one, but I looked it up. So the first one is the cloak guy, and he's like, "Hey, here's the
Yeah.
lesson," which I
Uh-huh.
thought was really funny.
Yeah.
Like that worked. And then they show She-Ra and
Uh-huh.
like her sword or whatever. And then apparently at the very end of the credits, Evelyn goes and picks up Skeletor's skull, and you hear him laughing or something. So it's like, but I was like, I hadn't eaten, so
Yeah.
we went to In and Out. I was like, I want to go eat, so we
Yeah.
left.
Yeah,
But
again, I think this movie's gonna work really well for some people. Some audiences are
yeah,
gonna
yeah,
absolutely love this
yeah,
movie. For me, it was like a little more than half the time I was fine with it.
yeah,
Should we get into scores?
yeah. Let's do it.
So we score things out of 10 on our channel, 10 being the best. We give a technical rating, we give a rating for the ending, we give a rating for rewatchability, a rating for cultural impact and significance, and a rating for our subjective thoughts on the film. Kramer, what is your technical rating for Masters of the Universe?
I gave it a 6. I mean, there's some really good stuff in here,
Hmm?
especially for like making a He-Man movie. They did some really good stuff. The score was really good. The visual effects are really good. A lot of the acting is I think what they wanted to get. And Idris Elba, I just love Idris Elba. He's such a great actor, and I thought he nailed the role. But the uneven tone, as we talked about, and kind of just the fact that they didn't own the silliness of it, I really wish they would have done that. So I'm docking points for a lot of that.
Yeah, that's where I'm at is a 6 right on. It's like worked better than I expected it to. But it felt like the kind of movie where I was like, oh, this really could have been great.
Hmm.
And like just like awesome. And it was like had awesome moments, but then yeah, that inability too many cooks in the kitchen on the
Yeah,
script
yeah,
and yeah,
yeah,
some weird sort of
yeah,
like pacing and plot logic moments that were
yeah.
just a little weird. How about the ending?
The ending I'm giving a 6.5 because it was pretty cool when he did have that, and they really went for it in the like the flashback sequence where he's going
Yeah.
through his mind. But it ultimately too, just again not really owning it. The He-Man line, like there was some of those weird moments that didn't work completely well. So
Yeah, I would give I gave it a 6. I would bump it up to point 0.5 just for that sequence where he's like, I was holding back, and he just like
yeah, yeah, that was
unleashes
cool.
on Skeletor. I was
That
like,
was
yeah,
cool.
it's always fun to see the hero kind of go
Yeah,
wild and just do something fun like that.
yeah,
So yeah, but again, it's like why be so embarrassed about the He-Man name?
yeah,
It
yeah,
is a
exactly.
ridiculous name. I
It is.
agree,
Yeah,
but that's the movie you're making,
yeah,
you know?
exactly. Lean
Uh,
into it.
Yeah. How about the rewatchability?
Rewatchability, I gave a 6.5.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of fun stuff you could watch in there, and now knowing it, I might enjoy it more, but I might be being a little generous, but it was still fun.
I gave it a 5 just because this is a more subjective category.
Yeah.
I think just for nostalgia's sake, I think still for my money, weirdly, if I was gonna go watch a Masters of the Universe movie, I would probably pick the 1987
Oh,
one.
really?
Just because I grew up on it, and it's like, I don't think it's a better movie. It's not.
Yeah.
But I just am like, there's nothing really here that I don't know that I care to see this movie again. Like, if like I'm probably not gonna seek it out after this. How about cultural impact and significance?
Cultural impact, I'm giving a 5 because it's not doing really great, and I don't think it's really going to get a sequel. So, and I think it's kind of I don't know. We'll see how it goes, but I don't think it's making as huge of an impact as they would have liked.
I gave it a 6 just because of how long it took them to get the movie made.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's like not terrible, that it's like fine, could mean that like they managed to breathe some kind of life back into a property that seemed unredeemable. Irredeemable, I think is the word. How about your subjective score?
My subjective score is a 6.5. I had fun. I got what I wanted with the action sequences. I think it could have been better, but ultimately, I mean, I think they made the movie that they wanted to make, and I think they did a good job with it most of the time.
Yeah, my subjective score is a 6, and it's just sort of like I said, I think for some people they're gonna really, really like this. It's gonna be just their flavor, and they're gonna feel like that they nailed the tone and they did it.
Totally.
But I think that it's like just good enough, which is also just not good enough to be frustrating how close they came. And it's amazing that it got made at all, but like it is like, man, you guys were actually, some of these ideas you were really onto something and you just didn't fully commit.
Totally.
Yeah. We've got a really exciting slate coming up. We're heading into a really fun stretch of films. This weekend, we are going to go see Disclosure Day, Steven Spielberg's new film. So if you would like to watch along with the show, that is what we are seeing next. And then it goes right into Toy Story, and which goes right into Supergirl. So we got a nice, like, fun little stretch coming up. But Disclosure Day is, boy, I'm excited.
I know. I want to, I'm keeping my expectations low.
I know.
As I always try to do, but I am excited though. I hope it's a lot of fun.
So if you want to watch along with the show and not have it spoiled for you, go see Disclosure Day, and that's what we'll be talking about next week. What did you think of Masters of the Universe? Let us know in the comments. Like, share, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And we will see you next week.